Hey everybody, and welcome to my live today, IG live and so on YouTube. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I have a couple of questions I think that were left over from yesterday. Hello everybody, and I do want to make sure I answer those for you. I hope you're doing well today. I know the weather here in the UK, I know some of you aren't in the UK, but has taken a really good turn for the being cold, isn't it? It's crazy out there today. And we're just not used to it. So it's all getting used to it. So do please drop your questions into the chat boxes so that I can help you today, because that's what I am here for. So do please ask me any questions you've got at the moment so that I can answer them for you live. And also, if you have any topics or anything you'd like me to talk about, then please do let me know, because I will be happy to do that. Now, I think a lot of you have been messaging me recently about how you're coping with lockdown and just the craziness of it all. And the fact that there's no hairdressers, and there's the fact that, we're just so, it's interesting though, isn't it? How people have got different ways of coping with things, don't you think? Because some people are, I've got clients who are drinking a lot more, but then I've also got clients who are exercising a lot more. And there's some people who are eating a lot more. And there's some people that are really taking the time to connect with friends and actually being more sociable and seeing more people on FaceTime meetings than they would have done when they were outside of lockdown. But then there's other people who have come quite reclusive and actually stayed at home but not made any contact with people, and so actually are missing that social interaction. So it's really interesting how people cope with things in different ways. And I was wondering what your strategy has been. Are you some of my clients are still making a real effort every time they go to the supermarket. Going out is the new, it is going to the supermarket, isn't it? It's not really anything else unless you're going to work. So it's interesting to think, okay, things have changed. We have a new normal. But how are you coping with that? I've got friends who are, especially one friend who finds the whole COVID thing just really difficult to cope with. Like, her anxiety levels are up, she can't sleep, she's really worried about things. Whereas I've got other friends who are just like, oh yeah, whatever, and they're still carrying on their lives as normal. So there's such a different spectrum about how we cope with challenges. You think that there's regulations so everyone is following them in the same way. Well, they're not, are they? Clearly they're not, with Dominic Cummings going up and down the country. And then I think we saw a wave of people doing things after that, but not even just after that, before as well. Some people were, oh, there's no virus, it's all a conspiracy theory. Have you got friends saying that? I've got one friend who just says that, it's just a conspiracy theory. And then which is crazy, I believe. But then there's other people who are taking it super, super serious, and they've got the mask and the gloves and everything, which is obviously protecting them and their family. But, everyone has a different way of dealing with it. Some people are doing all the precautions because they think that's the right thing to do, but then they are nervous, but they're managing that anxiety. And then other people aren't managing that anxiety. Hey, Will. There's so many different types of coping mechanisms to cope with lockdown. And that's what's fascinating here, because the similarity between how you cope with lockdown and isolation and how you cope with a breakup and divorce is really very similar, because you're suddenly in isolation, you're on your own. And how are you coping with that? So guys, how are you coping? What are you doing that's keeping you going? Are you one of those who are now drinking more? I'm shopping for an elderly lady on my road. Every week I go and she gives me her list, and it's really fascinating. I don't know if any of you are shopping for other people at the moment, but it is really fascinating to see how other people, the foods that other people eat. And to be honest, most of the stuff she asked me for, one, I've never heard of, and two, I've no idea where it is in my supermarket. So she's always telling me, if you go around here and you go down that aisle, it's on there. Anyway, she drinks every week. I have to get her a large bottle of gin and a large bottle of whiskey. She's 89, and she's very sharp, very astute. She's an amazing, lovely lady, and it's a real pleasure to do this for her. But I really don't know how she gets through a large bottle of gin and a large bottle of whiskey every 7 days. It is literally beyond me. But maybe that's what we do, and that's how she's got to such a great old age and stayed healthy and pickled herself from the inside out, maybe to reserve, I don't know, but it works for her. So, that's great. So what works for you? What is working? Because if you can identify what your strategy is that's successful to get you through this, then the interesting thing is you can put that onto, you can use the same strategy. Maybe you have to adapt it in a little way, but you can use the same strategy for how you cope with your breakup. Now, a lot of people have been messaging me to say that they're devastated by their breakup. Being on their own again is really, really hard. And that is like getting used to a new normal, because it is a new normal. This time your partner's gone and you have to learn to be more self-reliant. You have to learn how to, obviously you're going to miss them. So how do you cope with that? What was somebody else in your life not being there? Because it leaves a bit of a hole. And if you weren't frustrated to the point you wanted them gone, then obviously that can be very painful. And I tell you, that is normal. It's normal to find it difficult and to miss someone when they're not around anymore, especially someone that you love so much, and knowing that they're not coming back, and that, it also has potentially rejection mixed in with that emotion, as well as sadness. And also it could be, a bit of anger. And I know someone that's emailed me and overnight was anger and jealousy and betrayal all sort of mixed up into one. And somebody else, can't remember your name, but it was abandonment as well, was a big issue. And, this can be tough and challenging, to have those emotions going around. So how can you deal with them? Well, first of all, it's, someone was saying to me actually this morning, distraction, Sarah, just distract myself. And distraction is a really good tool to, for example, at night time, if you can't sleep, I think distraction is quite a good tool. So whether that's reading a book, listening to some meditation, some people watch movies and fall asleep while the TV's on, whatever works for you is important to find out what that is. And distraction can be good from that point of view, but you can't just use distraction to get over your breakup. And I'll tell you why. Because actually what happens is that's called stuffing your emotions. It's what I call stuffing your emotions. You kind of push them down, but they're still there. They're still there. So you're dragging them around with you into your future. So you never really heal. You've never really grieved the end of that relationship. You've never really dealt with it. And it kind of means that you're still got that to come out. Those emotions are still there and they will have to come out at some point. So what I would suggest is, if you are dealing with some very overwhelming emotions, that you identify specifically what the most controlling emotion is for you. So whether that's betrayal, whether that's sadness, whether that's fear. And then what I would suggest is you jump into that emotion, like really jump into it and face it head on. Because one of the things that we do as human beings is we're very good at avoiding things. So something's really scaring us and really worrying us, we won't really face it. We'll tend to walk away from it. Or we'll think about it all the time, but in a way that just kind of perpetuates it. And what I'm suggesting here is literally just to sort of shut your eyes for a bit and jump into that emotion, maybe just for 10 seconds, not more than that, maybe less. And just saying, look, what's the worst this emotion can feel like? And almost like the bully in the playground, you confront it. And you say, right, okay, I want to feel this. And feel where you feel it in your body, because you'll feel it in different places. And then do you remember that exercise where you can identify what color and shape and temperature, what movement it is, how heavy it is, all those things. And then you pull it out and then you change it for all your favorite things. So you could change it from, I've had people with a cold gray lump of coal that was heavy to a light pink fluffy cloud, and then put it back inside and see how that feels. Movement works quite well as well. So if it's moving one way, move it the other. So techniques like that will help you to just kind of dial down those emotions. But what I want you to do first is identify it, where you feel it. What sounds does it have with it? Is there a voice? Is there a question? Is there something that goes over and over in your head? Because what you find is once you confront things and get total clarity, you start to dial down those negative emotions. You start to own them. Instead of being like, oh, I don't want to go there, and living in fear of something, jump in and go, okay, I'm going to own this. Right, fine, bring it on. I want to know what this feels like. I'm going to look it in the eye and say, right, okay, I hear you, I feel you, I see you. And then step out. Because what that does is that you're not then scared of it. It's not controlling you, you're controlling it. And it puts you in a much more empowered state to be able to do something about it and take control. So like I said, it's a bit like facing up to the bully in the playground, and it kind of dials it down, kind of like, oh, okay. Because if you've experienced it, then it can't really control you. Also, another technique for these things is sort of just thinking about what, you're channeling your energy on these negative things, which is normal in human nature. And we do put them at the forefront, unfortunately, rather than keeping them at the back of our mind. So what happens is we're focusing on that, so we see more of it. So obviously what we want to do is try and shift things around. so that we're not focusing constantly on the negatives, that we're shifting our focus onto other things. So instead of channeling all that energy into that fear, focus, you have to take control of it. And I know there was an NHS worker, a nurse, that was on the radio the other day, and she was saying every morning she wakes up scared, like really scared, because she knows she's risking her life when she goes into work every day. And what she's trying to do is to channel that energy consciously first thing in the morning from fear into courage. And she says in bed when she wakes up in the morning, it kind of hits her, and then she has to kind of calm herself down and then feel, switch it around in her mind. So what does courage feel like, and how do I change this? Because, that energy is still there. So you can either let it perpetuate as fear or sadness or betrayal or whatever the emotion is for you. But the idea is to shift it into something that's more empowering. And she said, it was really moving actually, and she said that just channeling it into courage and focusing on the good that she's doing, and that people need her, and that it's going to be okay, and she will get through this, and she'll do a lot of good in the process, is enough for her to go, right, okay, I can do this. And obviously when she gets to work, there's lots of other people doing the same thing, and that gives her an extra boost. So this is how you can apply it to you in the morning, because I know a lot of you have written in to say that when you wake up in the morning, it kind of hits you like a wave. Did any of you experience that when you're going through a difficult time, or a breakup or a divorce? You sort of go to sleep, finally you fall asleep, and then when you wake up in the morning, you're like, and then like, oh, I just remembered what I'm going through. Oh my gosh, I can't. And then that sinking feeling, or that sick feeling, or however that manifests for you. So actually, that's a really good time to say, right, first of all, what's good about this right now, and try and channel the energy into something more positive. Refocus your mind on what's good about today. And it might be nothing to do with that. It could be, the sun is shining, and, I've woken up, and, if you're healthy, or you've got great kids, or you've got, something to look forward to in the day, that's where your mind goes. And today's going to be an awesome day. I'm going to make it an awesome day. And then it's like, right, up I get. So you're changing the focus of that energy, because it's up to you to control this. Remember, you can decide to focus all your energy on your negative situation. And some negative situations require a lot of focus. If you're going through a divorce and you're going through all the paperwork and those kind of things, you are going to have to focus on it. But what I'm saying is, if you can try and manage that as a business, like the paperwork side and those sort of things, so that when you're not doing the actual work, the emotional side, which isn't covered with divorce lawyers. This is the thing. You go to a divorce lawyer and they're very kind of like, you'll be all right, you'll get through this, I promise you, and you've got to do this, 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 and this. There's so much emotion that needs to be dealt with, and that's your responsibility. It's not the lawyers. And in fact, the lawyers will strip out all emotion from all correspondence, because it's not what the divorce is about. The divorce is the business end of the relationship. It's not the emotional end. Now, emotions get caught up in things like, where am I going to live? How much money will I have? Time with the kids, all those sort of things. But you don't actually, it's not, the lawyers aren't considering those as the forefront priority. That's not what you're paying them for. But sometimes your emotions will get caught up in that process, and you will find that very difficult to keep them separate. So the trick is to manage your own emotions yourself by controlling what goes on in here, and the remote control to your brain. So you can do that by changing how you're standing, changing how you're breathing. Taking a deep breath can just let some pressure out, going for a little jog in the morning, or a brisk walk around the park, if that is regulation friendly, obviously. You've got to figure out what it is for you, because everybody is different. And some people say, oh, you're going to say exercise, I'm not a gym person. And that's great. At least you're not a gym person. So what are you? Oh, well, I'm not into exercise. Okay, well, exercise is really important. Healthy body, healthy mind. And you don't have to be super fit. But what you do need to be is looking after yourself and respecting yourself. Because if you're going to learn to love yourself, which is an essential part of healing, especially if you've been in a toxic relationship or an abusive relationship, or just in a relationship where someone's left you and you feel less than and your confidence is all over the place, you need to learn to respect yourself and to love yourself. And that means not being like super healthy all the time, or super athletic all the time. But it's a balance, and it's about saying, okay, I like the 80-20 rule of 80% of the stuff that you're going to eat is healthy or fresh or relatively, not over manufactured, shall we say. And 20% eat what you like, knock yourself out. Because then it's not too draconian. Because I think if you set a lot of rules up, you're setting yourself up to fail. It's not about, I've got to be perfect, I've got to be this, but you've got to learn to love yourself. And actually what you put in your body is what you'll get out. So if you're putting in foods that are draining you of energy or aren't packed full of good stuff, it's going to be harder to get that energy. And when you're going through a tough time like a breakup, you're going to need all the help you can get. So out of respect for yourself and to give you a helping hand, watching what you eat is absolutely key, but not to a fanatical point or not being on diets, but just right. I'm going to eat more healthy foods, less unhealthy foods, and I'm going to go for one walk around the block every day. I mean, bingo, boom, automatically that's a step up. I promise you, once you start getting into those routines, you might think, oh, I can walk a bit further today. Or actually, I'm just really enjoying the exercise. Or I can't go out, so when I get up, I'm just going to do a few star jumps. So I'm going to do Joe Wicks at 9 o'clock in the morning, or whatever it is for you. You know, these things are important. Also, things that are important, the things like somebody asked me, actually, it didn't, thought health. I don't know if you're on yet, hun, but you asked me a question about how do you get ready for dating and how do you know what to say to people? Well, this is an interesting question, isn't it? Because when you go on dates, and I know from some of the emails I get, it's like, well, what happens if they don't like me? And what happens if I'm not good enough? And what happens if I'm not their type, or I'm not thin enough, or fit enough, or tall enough, or old enough, or or I'm too old? You know, all these questions come up, you know, and which is really, you know, obviously can be, you know, worrying. And I think it's natural and normal, by the way. So, you know, everybody feels that way. But the important thing is just to remember that actually they've got to impress you as well. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So you've got to think about what you want from a relationship, what you want from a partner. Do you want another serious relationship right now? Or are you open to just having a bit of fun and seeing where it goes? You know, a lot of people at the moment, obviously, we've got this new law that you can't have sex with somebody that you don't live with. You can't go round to another household and have sex with someone that you don't live with. There's some new absolute law that Boris has come up with recently, last couple of days. And so now a lot of my clients are like going for social distancing walks in parks, which isn't the most romantic. And but actually what it's doing is it's forcing people to ask questions and get to know each other a lot better. Because, you know, it's that's all you can do, really, isn't it? Talk. You can't walk along in silence. It's not going to really be great. And because there can't be any intimacy, it's very difficult. So I think working out, you know, what kind of person you want to be with is important. You know, what do you want them to be like? Who do they have to show up as? What kind of values do they have to have? What is acceptable behavior for you in a relationship? So if you can work out a bit about what you want and also what you need is different to what you want. I know we've talked about this a bit before, but it's absolutely essential, guys, that you know what you need. So, for example, if you're the kind of person that needs a partner who's very empathetic, or a partner that's very in tune with how you're feeling before you say it, or it's just really handy around the house, or is super good with kids, or, you know, whatever it is that you need to feel good in a relationship, then you need to make sure you're clear on that. Because otherwise you will start to date people, and, you know, you can get into text messages on dating apps. And I've got a client at the moment, she's text messaging on the dating apps a couple of different people. And what she said to me was, not one of them has asked me much about me or what I do. It's all, you know, I'll ask them a question like, what do you do? And they go, oh, I'm in property, or I'm in this, I do that. But they haven't said to her, well, what do you do? Or tell me a bit about your job. Or how's your day been? Or they might say, how's your day been? She said, but then it's all about them. So she said it's very interesting. And that's what I mean. I mean, it's difficult over text. And I think you shouldn't shut somebody down just because on text they haven't asked you much about you. But you can tell a lot about a person by the kind of things they ask. You know, and if you're asking questions and they're not asking you questions, you've got to wonder what's going on. Or maybe it's the fact that, you know, they don't really care. They're just looking for someone to have a messaging with and go for walks in the park with. I don't know. But you have to be aware and you have to work out what you want. It's not about whether you fit their criteria or are they going to like me. It's not all about that. I mean, there's a part of that, of course, because you're human and you're going to want to look your best and you're going to want to have some personality about you and you have some questions ready to ask them. I think about, you know, open questions that aren't coming, you know, that don't give yes and no answers, that maybe get them to talk about themselves a bit. That's important. So I would say questions like, you know, you tell me a bit about you, tell me about where you grew up, you know, rather than, you know, have you got kids? That's quite a closed question. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your job. those sort of things. And then just get them talking, and I know it sounds scripted and a little bit, it's a bit false to sort of come up with questions before you go. And I'm not suggesting you turn up with a clipboard and go, right, here are my questions. That's going to put people off probably. But I would suggest that you think about it if you're nervous about it. I mean, some people are, great at chit chat and it'll just flow and you're not worried about that. But if, as Thought Health was yesterday, asking me, Sarah, how do I know what to say? What am I going to, what sort of questions would I ask? I think that if you're in that situation, then you just need to do a little bit of prep like you would for, if you were meeting, like you're going for a job interview, you might find out a little, as much as you can about them, or some open questions to dig into the things that might be useful for you. So these things are key. And I think dating is a great idea. I think at the moment, guys, you just have to be a little bit careful and follow the rules. There's quite a few of them. So it's not as much fun as it probably used to be. But I think it's bringing out a different dynamic, isn't it? It's bringing out a nurturing and the ability to have a conversation. I think whilst they're saying that the divorce rate is set to spike, I also think that relationships that are starting during lockdown will be built on stronger foundations, because you're actually having to do more more getting to know people, more questions, more bonding, more sort of finding out if you've got similar values. And that's what's important. That's what's really, really important, because that's what gives you a flavour for this. Is this relationship gonna last? And also, the people that aren't into, and don't want those kind of relationships, they're not going to stick around. So you'll filter them out pretty quick. Someone is a player and, they must be having a really tough time right now. But if they are a player, then, you're going to figure that out pretty quickly, because they're going to get bored with the questions or they're not going to ask you any. So, it's a good red flag and a thing to note for yourself. So do let me know if you've got any questions on here today, because I know, here we go. So confidence is a big issue when you come out of a breakup. I know a lot of people feel that there's something wrong with them if you've been left by someone. But actually, you know what? Sometimes when one door closes, more doors open, that old saying. But actually, what I find is that when you've been in a relationship where someone's left you, you will have known for a while that things aren't right. You'd have had those feelings of being uncomfortable or not being worthy or being less than for quite a while. Now, whether that's you openly acknowledging it, or whether you've just been a little bit feeling low, or you haven't felt as loved recently. But usually it doesn't just happen overnight. I know for some of you it has, but usually there is a bit of a build-up where you sort of feel a bit less than, because you're like, oh, what's going on? The things feel a bit different. They're pulling away a bit. There's a slightly different look in their eye. They're not as excited when they come in from work. So those things are really important just to keep an eye on, because actually when you come out of they're warning signs, obviously, if you're coming out of a relationship. And sorry, I see someone walking around outside. But one of the things that is really key with this is that to know it's not you. Somebody's left you. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Actually, the freedom to grow and to feel good when someone like that, who's been blocking that love or connection, or you've been suffering that sort of rejection every day from not getting that full love, or that what the relationship used to be affect, is quite powerful, can be quite debilitating, which is why you feel a little bit lost at the beginning and less than. But as time goes on and you start to learn you get your life back on track, you start doing your breakup bucket list, and you start realizing that there's life outside of what you knew before, then it all starts to come back and you start to get your mojo back. And you do. And I promise you, life is full of ups and downs. It's a roller coaster up and down. But actually, you've all survived 100% of your worst days. Yeah, it's true. You've all survived 100% of your worst days. To get to this point, you've got through them. So you've got to be, proud of yourself for doing that, and know that you can survive. And think back to other things that have been tough in your life. I know that most of you have had some difficulties through life. Not, some people sail through life with not much to upset them, but most people have some pretty traumatic things to deal with. And, if you've got through that, you can get through this. I promise you, you can. And there's lots of support out there. So do drop me questions, drop me messages. I know a lot of you have and do. And keep in touch. And I will see you next week. So send me some questions over the weekend if you've got any. And I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Mwah! Lots of love, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye.